So can you begin with just talking about how you feel about doing this?
I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit hesitant. There's certain things that I'm going to reveal that have mostly been between the privacy of my family, meaning like my sister and my mother, because they're the closest people to me.
Can you start with talking a little bit about what your stylist says about you?
I always said that my hair is kind of like a physical evidence of my confidence, because you know people always talk about like inner confidence and that you can't really see it, but for me my hair was almost like the visual aspect of like the true evolution of all my confidence like coming in together. I was, you know, modeling for years, so it was always, you know, conversation about changing it or straightening it, what they deemed as more commercial or more beautiful. My mother to me is like the idol. You know, her hair is just like mine, so people always constantly telling me that it wasn't beautiful or I needed to change it kind of gave me this weird sense of like, oh, so you don't think what my mother looks like is beautiful? It hit home.
Can you just take off your top?
Yeah. And then I was kind of deemed as like a little bit of a troublemaker, because I would go on set and be telling the stylist, no, I don't want to do that. I feel more comfortable wearing it like this. And that's kind of like a big no-no. I started this website with one of my good friends, and the site specifically focused on women, especially women of color, feeling comfortable and being themselves. Things that happened in my childhood also played a big part in starting that website, focusing on like empowering women.
Can you just take your jacket off?
Yeah.
Can you talk more about that?
I have an identical twin sister, so we're like best friends, and our dad was very militant and strict, while on the other hand, our mother was very loving and the polar opposite of our father. But it was a little bit different in our household because our mother was the bread maker. The only time I saw her at home was at night, and she would read us bedtime stories every night. But our dad was the one that was there raising us. Any person that met him instantly loved him. He was just a very charismatic person, but on the flip side of that, he came from a very hard lifestyle, just a hard childhood. He was an ex-heroin addict. He kicked the habit, but he was still dealing with some demons that unfortunately carried in to our lives when we were younger. When he needed to get his point across, he was very physically abusive. We were dealing with it every week until we were about 14 years old. So anytime he was in a bad mood or he thought we were doing something that we shouldn't have been doing, which could have been easily as us, you know, coming home with a report card and bringing home a B when he thought we should have had an A. Sometimes we would be bruised, but he did it in a very manipulative way, so places where people wouldn't obviously see it because we had to go to school. And he would use threats to tell us that, you know, if you told your mother, I'll harm your mother. As I gotten older, I realized, because we have a half-sister, and she got pregnant at a very young age and dropped out of school, and I think he was just trying to prevent all of that in his way. Doesn't make an excuse. It's not an acceptable thing for the violence, but I think in his way, that was the only way he knew of trying to divert us from that same path.
It was his way of showing love.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you just take your shoes?
You know, I heard him talk to my mother in a way that he shouldn't have been talking to as a man, but I never thought he would put his hands on her. And I think for years, I remember my mother coming home because she would work so late, and she would come back and, you know, and she would ask us, how's your day, girls? And we would just lie. For years, we lied, wow. we lied. You know, because he said he would harm our mother, and I believed it. There was a big turning point when I turned 14. A couple things happened. Me and my sister saw for the first time our dad actually, you know, strike our mother, and that was a point when me and my sister were talking, and we were trying to get the courage up to tell our mother like what has been going on for all these years, and a lot of it had to do with not wanting to hurt our mother in any way. We didn't want to stress her out, and I felt like as the years went on and on, it was harder to say it. She came home early from work, which never happens. She never comes home early, and she came home way early. It was like during lunchtime. So she came back on her break for some reason and opens up the door and sees me, my sister, and our dad in the hallway, and he has an empty revolver in his hand. There were no bullets in the gun, but it was, sometimes he would get really upset and he would be like, oh, hide my gun, because he just said he would get in fits of rages and he just didn't want the gun around him. So he would tell us to put it in a place where we couldn't find, like he couldn't find it. So he got into one of his rages and was threatening to harm my sister. And then he wanted to know where the gun was. My mother just happened to walk in on that day. And I'll never forget it because my mom walks in and she didn't say anything. And he tried to divert the situation, just like, oh, I was looking for, just made some excuse. And she shook her head and then asked him very calmly if he could go to the store to get her something. As soon as she left, she went upstairs. She had 2 suitcases and she said, pack a few things. We get in the car, we leave, and I remember going to like an IHOP or something. It was like one of those like small diners in Baltimore. And we were eating and we were there for a good 2 or 3 hours. My mom was on the phone. Then we came back to the house and my dad was gone. She had committed him that day. She immediately made some phone calls and had him committed to a psychiatric ward. It all happened so quickly, like within a day. And then I remember me and my sister starting to tell our mother what had been going on for all these years, and kind of like her just sitting there. You know, I could see the look in her face, like, oh. Immediately I could see like all the guilt like way down on her, which is something that me and my sister didn't want. That's exactly what we didn't want to happen. I don't know, my mom's always just been that beacon of light, and just to see that little bit, I could just see it. And it wasn't like we were guilty of anything. It was just something that she was placing on herself because she thought as a mother that she should have known. I saw him after we would visit him in the psychiatric ward. We did that for at least a little bit over a year he was in there. I almost felt like he didn't belong in there at some point, you know? I felt like he needed serious therapy, but the place that he was in, they were just heavily medicating him. I mean, there were things about my father that were very, very lovable. It was hard to see him in that state like that.
Can you take off your mask? Wow. What are you expressing in terms of your voice now in relationship to this story?
The story. In that moment, I really saw the true empowerment when she saw that her children were in danger. She reacted like that. I know that affected my whole psyche of how I feel about women and being so protective and so encouraging. I mean, I love to see women succeed. I mean, I'm not saying I don't like to see men succeed, but I just feel there's like almost like a sisterhood. And for me to like try to create a platform where women feel comfortable being themselves and not scared of the thoughts of other people or maybe what's going on at home. Because now it's just the freedom of not having to hide anything anymore. So it's just kind of gone in overload where I'm like, Mom, like, you know, I call her for anything and everything.
What do you love the most about your body and what do you dislike the most about your body?
We wore like sweatpants and sweatshirts like to high school every day. And I think that had just stemmed from, you know, my father. He didn't want us to be these overly sexual girls. When I was younger, I did not like to show any form of my body. I definitely felt guilt. I definitely decided a long time ago that I wasn't gonna let my past define who I was. I didn't want to hate him. I just didn't want to be in that place. I just wanted to let it go. Like, I'll never forget it and I'll always appreciate it. But I didn't want to let it hold on to me where it would I didn't want to carry any anger.
When do you feel the most vulnerable?
This is very, very vulnerable. This is very vulnerable for me right now.
Very vulnerable and very strong.
Yeah.
Joy. When do you feel the most beautiful?
When I'm around my sister, she is half of me. So when we're together, I feel the most beautiful because I feel like my whole self in a way. Yeah. All those things that happened in the past have made me stronger. It's made me more aware. It's made me more humble, more thankful. For me, suffering means strength. Because even when I was little, I knew that there was another side to this. I knew that this is not it. It's easy to be wrapped up in the moment when you're going through it. I think the real strength is how you overcome it. Even if you fail, get back up and do it again. It's life.
Last question. Why in your body is it a good place to be?
There's a sense of peace here. It took me years to get to that point. I feel peaceful. I feel at home. I feel like me. It took me years to get to that point. I feel like me.
It's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're like unbelievable.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're incredible.